President-elect Donald Trump captured many votes from rural America. Now farmers and ranchers look to see how the Trump administration might approach farm policy and trade. And the governor leads a large trade mission to China. We'll learn more. And would you support sales tax on more things if it meant lower property taxes on the farm? Find out more straight ahead on Grow. Rural America has spoken, and our country has a new president. Many pundits say President-elect Trump clearly dominated in small towns and rural areas, and that was true here in central and western Nebraska. Later in the show, we'll see how President Trump may govern when it comes to farm and ranch policy. One concern some have had is with the president-elect and his stance on trade. Some take it as if he wants to rip up trade agreements with other countries. Governor Ricketts clarifies that Trump supports free trade and wants to make trade deals better.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things about the president-elect that he said is, and certainly he said it to me when we talked, was not that he, in fact, I heard him specifically say he was for free trade. What he wants, though, is better trade deals. And that, so for example, can we get the tariffs down even lower than they are today, which of course would benefit us. So I think that if you think that he's for tearing up the trade deals, it's really in an effort to try and get us better deals, which should open up more markets. Obviously, that's going to be subject to negotiation, but I think that's really what Mr. Trump is looking for, is making sure that he's doing the best for American companies and American workers.
While on a trade mission in China this week, Ricketts says this is a good opportunity to expand relationships for Nebraska. Areas in China are limited on resources like water, for instance, and face a challenge of feeding a growing population. Precision ag equipment and practices, water conservation, and even beef are all in demand. And the governor says this is a chance to grow Nebraska in the long term.
Beef has not been on the menu in China, and it is something that the Chinese are demanding more and more. It is also something where they've got constraints on their resources with regard to water, as we've discussed, and so they don't have a whole lot of resources that they can spare toward more beef production, so they're going to be looking to other countries like the United States to be able to bring more in. So I think it's really got a tremendous potential for us to be able to expand what we're doing, and then of course ultimately that's going to help support our commodity prices, and then again long term be able to help us with regard to growing our state at home and ultimately driving revenues for tax dollars.
Back here in Nebraska, the governor has taken the position that we need property tax relief, but can we truly afford it? Well, we might if we expand sales tax to other areas. That's the argument from some. Here's more.
But the biggest engine in the state.
Farmers are taking a heck of a pay cut, this man says, while their taxes seem to keep going up.
When one of your top 3 expenses for your product or my crop is property taxes, we don't do this to any other business.
This symposium in York finds many school leaders agree with farmers that the state relies too much on property taxes to fund education.
Local property taxes are too high, but it's not a school spending problem, as we talked about here in the presentation. It's a school funding problem.
The Open Sky Policy Institute says folks in rural Nebraska pay 46% more in combined income and property taxes.
A lot of concerns over property taxes, a lot of frustration. We've seen that in our data, and hopefully we can bring people together to continue the conversation in Lincoln starting in January.
Renee Fry says all options need to be on the table, including using income or sales tax for education.
We could definitely broaden our sales tax base. We could start by taxing services that aren't currently taxed. We tax the night at the movies, we don't tax the day at the spa.
That you could broaden the sales tax base to come up with the revenue to do this on the property tax side.
Friesen says he's been part of a group meeting for months looking at those options and agrees with the school leaders. Discussions like this are moving things forward.
One thing that we'll see go differently down in Lincoln this session, we'll have farmers and school leaders and board members going down together instead of separately.
Now to our Twitter poll, where we asked about sales tax and property tax relief. And 86% of you said yes, you would support broadening sales tax to cover more things if that resulted in lower property taxes. Just a handful of you said no, or that you were unsure. As always, make sure to join the conversation on Twitter with us. Down to the final rows. Harvest is nearly complete here in Nebraska. In this week's crop report, we see temps well above normal, which helped get remaining corn acres harvested. Statewide, around 85% of corn has now been combined. Sorghum, right about the same point. Soybeans are virtually done. Things do remain somewhat dry, and that appears to be affecting pasture and range conditions. Many producers were able to get in before some recent rains. Marilyn Barnett, our Grow co-host, has more.
Well, just as several producers finished up the last couple rows of harvest, a rain many have been wanting and waiting for started soaking the ground. I was able to talk to some producers in different locations all across the state and get an update on how harvest was in the area. Check this out.
Ended last Saturday, we wrapped it up, and overall it went very well.
First, we go to Gibbon, where many farmers were able to wrap up harvest pretty quickly.
Quick harvest.
It went well. It was a very smooth harvest. The weather was great. We were able to get done in probably record time.
Over in Hay Springs, some challenges with hail damage made harvest a bit rough.
Kind of a rough harvest for us.
Joe Dorhurst says that they finished up with the lack of moisture a bit discouraging.
We were way down.
But he remains optimistic.
Got to be the eternal optimist, I guess, and look forward better next year.
Over in Dawson County,
there's a few producers still not finished, but for the most part, I would say most of the crops are wrapped up in our area.
producers are hauling in their last few bushels.
Our harvest is done. It was good. It was not as good as the last couple of years, but is probably above trendline yields.
In the Fairfield area, some producers say this harvest didn't quite measure up to last year.
Harvest wasn't quite as good as it's been the last couple of years, but I think maybe we've been spoiled a little bit the last few years, but we're pleased.
The dry weather allowed harvest work to get done, but that rain was needed in so many areas. And you can even take a look at the drought monitor showing some areas in desperate need of moisture. A recent soaker was just what was needed, and it happened to fall right as combines were being put back into the shed. In Fairfield, one of the areas near that severe drought bullseye, farmers there were keeping a close eye on the storm.
I've checked my phone a few times already. It is nerve-wracking. There's talk, though, of our Little Blue NRD putting on some allocations for next year, some restrictions. So that's something that we'll have to be mindful of.
So the rain, a welcome sigh of relief for farmers in other areas across the state as well.
Well, the rain is great, and it was wonderful for us.
Perfect time for it to rain.
And you needed it,
Yes. I think the last I looked, from June through yesterday, we had about 5.5 inches in the area here east of Kearney.
Any little bit helps right now.
But around Hay Springs, a farmer there tells me, didn't see a single drop.
None at all.
You're not getting it?
None at all. I don't think we've had 2 inches of rain since June.
And they've had to make serious adjustments.
We had to pull cattle off pastures early.
And with low market prices on top of it, it's a challenge, but they keep plowing through.
You lick your wounds, look at what you could do better, and move forward.
Marilyn Barnett, NTV's Grow.
As for that recent rain, meteorologists at the National Weather Service office in Hastings say it's the first measurable precipitation in about a month. The last one, October 12th. They say the driest part of Nebraska right now is from Valley County to Kearney County. And this rain could change things, but only time will tell.
This does nothing but help us. You know, like you've seen, it's been a nice soaking rain all day, and that's kind of what you need if you want it to really soak in. So, you know, the slow and steady rain that we had today is perfect for, you know, getting into the ground.
Meteorologists say that rain should make a dent, but still, drought remaining here in Nebraska. And since we talked to the weather experts, here's a look at the current drought monitor. It shows about a third of the state remains in some category of drought. That bullseye continues to be right over Minden. We will have a closer look in our Grow Weather Report later in the program. From marketing to biology, careers in agriculture are more diverse than many realize. FFA students from across the state attended the Pathways to Careers conference in Grand Island last weekend. They got to interact with folks who work in egg-related industries and expand their view of what a career in agriculture can mean. It's much more than tractors and cattle.
I think there's a lot of different aspects of agriculture than just being on the farm. People have that misconception about agriculture. I think there's a lot of things like the food industry and marketing, sales, banking, stuff like that with finances and everything. There's so many different pathways.
FFA leaders say there are hundreds of career options that would be considered ag-related, and this annual conference allows kids to get some hands-on experience in some of those fields. President-elect Trump. What do those words mean for the future of agriculture policy? That's the focus of our Grow interview next.